Joe Lambert, thank you so much for being here. You're the head of consumer at Verizon Media, and we have a ton to talk about Yahoo Sports and even kind of beyond the sports umbrella at Yahoo. So thanks so much.
No, thanks, Jacob. It's great to be here. It's got a lot of great things to cover today.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive right into it. And I think, talking to you beforehand, to me, it seems like the most important thing here. I'm curious how you guys go about measuring improvements when it comes to diversity efforts, and just kind of where you would say Yahoo Sports are right now.
Yeah, it's a really important topic for us. Just to give you a little bit of context, Yahoo reaches 900 million customers every single month. We have, we're serving 89% of the internet population, and we are, highly engaged audiences are coming to us every day for both our original content as well as our premium partner content, as well as our premium services that we provide through, fantastic product experiences. So with this scale, we have a really important responsibility, and that is to make sure that we're serving diverse audiences. And when you say, what do we measure? How do we determine if we're actually getting it right? Mm-hmm. It's actually making sure that we are serving the audiences across the world that we're trying to reach. So very excited to say that in addition to being category leaders in things like sports and news and finance, one of the things that I'm most proud of is actually the progress we've been able to make in terms of being one of the number one platforms to reach African American audiences, one of the number one platforms to reach Latinx audiences. We're number one in terms of reaching women across the world as well. So, and actually also a leader in terms of reaching women's sports fans too. So, wow. I mean, it's a mix of the audience that really makes us determine, are we resonating? Does our content, does our product actually meet the consumer's passions and needs?
And it's perfect. And what is your sense of why those audiences are coming to you guys? What have you found to be successful in giving them what they're looking for?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think have helped us to really make a lot of progress. And actually, last year in the pandemic, it actually really did prove out. One of the benefits that we have at Yahoo is we are the unique combination of being a major scaled technology player as well as a major scaled media player. And as I said, both with first party as well as partner content. What's made us really successful is this unique combination allows us to be very nimble and agile. So we were able to pivot the teams to work on things, when everyone went home last March, mm-hmm. and actually live sports events stopped playing, for example, we were able to pivot really quickly to be able to make sure that the content that was out there, the experiences that we were building were relevant. So we created more live events. Just Keep Playing was one of them, to make sure that we were connecting, younger audiences, younger women, making sure that they kept in touch with sports. We did a bunch of things around mental health, reset your mindset, to be able to make sure that, again, touching those audiences and giving them the right type of information they were looking for. In addition to live events and new content, I mean, some of the new content categories that you would have seen across our platforms were things like covering, Black Lives Matter, women's equality, as well as, trans rights. And I already mentioned things like mental illness and mental wellness, which has been something that has been a hot topic across all different categories, but especially in the sports area. So lots of different moving pieces there, but that's what I think makes us special and able to actually serve these diverse audiences.
Yeah, you mentioned categories that have become topics of conversation that are getting covered in ways now that they weren't before. How do you go about ensuring that you guys are on all of those stories and that you continue to be, once the hashtags are no longer trending?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of success in terms of covering topics. We have, as I've mentioned, we've got our own newsrooms who are keeping pace with what's actually happening, listening to our audience, talking to our audience, covering news, covering all of the topics, especially the trending topics that have happened more recently. I mentioned a few before. Mm-hmm. Increasingly, things around social advocacy, mental health, women's sports visibility. One of the things that we've actually had a lot of success over the last 12 months is we actually introduced a new role, which is a multicultural editorial role. And actually, all of the editorial teams have these regular multicultural meetings. Wow. Where they come together and brainstorm and think about, how do we better serve our existing audience in the current environment? How can we attract new audiences, to our platform and to be able to enable us to serve them? And then what are the different topics or perspectives that we want to make sure we cover? And, one of the things that's critical to the success there is making sure that we do have diversity in our workplace, not just across the newsroom, also across product and engineering and marketing and business and insights, to make sure that we can continually monitor our success and make sure that we're, as I said, resonating with the audience.
And that position and those meetings, that's really interesting to me. Is that something that you modeled off something you guys were doing, in terms of other efforts, or is that kind of a new kind of model of having that person who's on top of these kinds of issues?
So the new head of multicultural content is actually a new role that we created last year. In terms of things like the editorial meetings and cross team collaboration, that's something that we've been evolving over time. It started with things like I'll use an example, tentpole events.
Yeah.
We just recently had Women's History Month. During that month, we pull all of the different brands together and we work through how do we, again, attract new audiences, better serve existing audiences, both with content as well as different types of product features. And then it's really evolved into this new area, though, which is, how do we serve a diverse audience and make sure that we have, different perspectives, make sure that we have, whether it's through partner content or our own original reporting, and our product experiences, that we're able to actually serve diverse audiences.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the partner content? I'm not sure everyone is totally familiar with what you guys have done there, and I'm curious, especially when it comes to these questions, how you have maybe elevated certain brands or brought certain brands in to fill new areas of content for you.
Yeah, so I mentioned before, across Yahoo overall, we have this huge audience, 900 million monthly active users, and they're coming to us for all types of content. For sports specifically, actually across all of our platforms and all of our newsrooms, we actually have a relatively, I'm going to say it changes a little bit by each area, but it's around about 10% original content as a general rule to about 90% content, premium publisher content. And our premium publishers are publications that you know well: the New York Times, USA Today, Reuters, Associated Press, and many others. One of the areas, though, that we have changed in the last little while in terms of making sure that our diversity and inclusion and different perspectives are incorporated across our content is we actually have been expanding our partners to make sure that we have more diverse partners as well. So I just have a couple to mention here. We recently introduced Just Women's Sports, On Her Turf, Players Tribune. Actually, we worked really closely with the WNBA around some news and exclusive news just recently. And just recently, Onyx is one of the latest partners that we've just added to the list. So again, just really working closely, not just with editorial, also with our partnership and business development team to make sure that we actually have, we're covering the right people and getting the right voices heard.
Yeah, and what for those partnerships, when it comes to data, how much are you guys looking at, the types of content that people want, that certain audiences are coming to you guys for?
Yeah, so we have our own internal data and insights, and we do track like what sort of content resonates with our audiences. Obviously, we're constantly looking to make sure that we're engaging audiences in the right way. And so we look at both viewership as well as engagement with different types of topics. We've seen some really increased engagement, as I mentioned before, in things like women's sports recently. Yeah. Different types of topics, particularly around culture and sports has been a new area for us. And obviously one of the bigger areas that we've been investing in lately, as we've sort of made our foray into sports betting, is around sports gaming and betting. And that's been a big area of focus for us over the last 18 months. And each month it gets bigger and bigger as that's the sports betting and gaming category continues to open up across the US.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people know Yahoo for a lot of things, but maybe primarily for our audience, know you guys for the fantasy products and some of the gaming products that you guys have developed over a long period of time. How does that fit into this equation when you're maybe bringing people in for that, and you can maybe show them some of this content that you guys have been newly developing?
Yeah, so overall for Yahoo, what our overall strategy is really to look at, we've got this huge diverse audience. How can we then, better serve them with, great experiences, connect them more deeply with their passions? So specifically on sports, obviously we have content, we've got scoreboards, we've got fantastic data and insights. More recently, well, actually, we've had 2 decades of experience in fantasy, as you know. So we've been in the gaming space for quite some time, but now we're moving from seasonal fantasy that you're probably familiar with, through to more of the daily fantasy, and right through now to the sports betting. And we've been able to do that in partnership with MGM. So how do we do that? I mean, it's a little bit of a mix of science and art. It's content. It's contextual product placements. So if you're looking at a scoreboard, you might see something that says, "Hey, have you thought about this particular offer?" But for us, it's really around personalization and making sure that we have the right offer, the right content in front of the right user at the right time.
And do you guys feel like you can make gaming and betting a more diverse hobby? I guess I should say. I think it has a very traditional feel of these diehards who live in Vegas, and I think there's probably a lot of younger, more diverse people that maybe would think it's not for them. And I'm curious if you found ways to introduce them to it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that I truly believe, and the team truly believes, that we can play to win here. We have, a really big, diverse audience. The sports gaming category, I mean, it only launched in the US, not gaming, betting category, really only started to open up in the US in 2018. By 2025, we're expecting the industry to be about, 15 billion. So estimates range between, I think, $28 billion, but let's say 15 to call it quit. By 2025, what's really interesting about it, though, is, there's hardcore bettors, but there's also, increasingly, even through daily fantasy, we're seeing people do, one and done, one-time bets, having a test, trying it out. I mean, by the end of 2021, I think if all of the states open up as sort of predicted, I think 5% of the US will be able to actually participate in the category. So I suspect, like other categories, maybe like cannabis, you might have, hardcore bettors that maybe come to our platform or try our platform, but you also might have some new entrants, particularly in the younger generations.
That's fantastic. I want to talk about social too, because I know you guys have put a lot of investment into that. How is Yahoo's audience and also its content strategy different on social versus on your own platforms?
Yeah, social's been a really interesting area for us, especially over the last couple of years. We have editorial teams, like dedicated editorial teams that do audience development, and social is one of the big areas for that. We've seen a lot of strength on particularly taking our expertise and our talent, as well as our data and insights, and actually putting it on big channels like TikTok and Instagram, as well as Twitter. And it's a great way for us to actually share the Yahoo voice or Yahoo Sports voice in different areas, engage with different types of audiences and new audiences, and hopefully bring them back into the Yahoo family. In terms of what's different, it's sort of different but the same. The underlying, success in any sort of reaching any channel, reaching any new audience is really around an authentic voice. Like, you want to have an authentic voice, whether you're talking to Gen X or a different type of audience on a different type of channel. But it's authenticity, making sure that we have the right subject matter experts that are front and center and the face of our brand, and then making sure that we, encourage, really great conversation with the audience.
Absolutely, and part of that also is building that community, right? I mean, people, maybe it's on TikTok or maybe it's on Instagram, but how do you go about building, an inviting community for people who, in the past, maybe haven't found a home within sports where they can talk to people about their passions?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a lot of success actually by trying and testing and iterating on different types of content. So, more recently, actually, looking back over the last couple of months, on Instagram, for example, some of our best hit, most engaged, stories were really around stories about women in sports, for example. So it's testing, it's experimenting. I look at something like Twitter. We have a great audience there, highly engaged, lots of great healthy debate. And then I look at something like TikTok, which is actually obviously a newer format, but an area that we've been investing in. And there we've actually been able to really build even a more diverse audience. I think, our Twitter platform for Yahoo Sports right now is 45% women versus 55% men, which is fantastic. And even more, that's on TikTok.
Yeah.
More so, we're starting to see different engagement as we try different stories and content in those different and new environments.
What do you think has contributed most to you talking about the increased interest in women's sports and obviously the increased output that you guys are doing? So I'm curious kind of what direction you would say that is. I think some people look at the growth of social media and say, oh, now we can actually see that people want to read this. I'm curious kind of what you would say has been the biggest cause for that growth in the women's sports category.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things. One is it's exactly what you said. It's hard to see if you're not testing and trying new things. So, product and new platforms has actually allowed us to be able to test and iterate really quickly and see that there is an audience that's really interested in different types of topics than maybe traditional sports might have looked like, 5-10 years ago. The other thing that I think has really contributed is diversity, both within the sports industry, across all different types of roles, players, coaches, all the way through, umpires, referees.
Yeah.
But also one of the contributing factors, I think, is actually the media industry has done a really, has made an increasingly strong effort to make sure that their newsrooms are diverse and that women are represented in the newsroom, and diverse faces are also represented in the newsroom. And this is one of the ways. I mean, there's nothing better than having diversity in your team that allows you to make sure that you have different perspectives. And, we talk about diversity. On the other side of that, I mean, we've seen similar types of progress on our efforts around accessibility as well. Making sure that we have, products that are accessible to all users. So we recently made a commitment to having 100% closed caption on all of our video content. We've actually been a long-term investor in accessibility, particularly around products. And, Yahoo Fantasy's actually got a lot of industry accolades around just how accessible it is. I'm very proud of what we've been able to do, particularly for the blind community, around being able to do voiceovers of scores and statistics. Exactly, which means that you've got these blind commissioners and gamers who are playing in leagues and they're having using the product in a really effective way. And actually some of those types of features and functionality also resonate with all users. So it helps everybody to become smarter about decisions they're making, whether it's free or paid.
That makes a ton of sense, and it gets to something I'm kind of picking up listening to you. Is you mentioned at the very beginning, I think, about your unique position as both a tech company and a content company. And it sounds like experimentation is really something that's at the core of your strategy. I'm curious kind of how experimentation plays a role when it comes to developing either new content or just evolving the content over time.
Yeah, I think that, as I mentioned, I think that is our unique benefit because we have technology in-house and we have editorial teams in-house that are able to move fast. Obviously, partner content is a huge part as well, but because we have these teams that are able to be nimble, we are able to experiment quickly. So, when everyone moved home, worked from home back in March. I'm still here, as you can possibly tell. Back in March last year, we started experimenting with things like, live events, because we obviously had done live programming before. We, did do some live events, digital events.
Yeah.
But a lot of our events, we actually, were live on site at sporting events. So actually hosting things from home, but making it, bringing in fantastic guests, we were able to experiment and prove it out, and then we were able to replicate it throughout the last 12 months. Another great example that the team worked on last year is actually it was for the NFL season. We launched Watch Together, which was a technology. Again, when people just couldn't get together, as effectively as they wanted to, we did a Watch Together new product feature to test and learn on. I think it was back in, July last year. And at that time, and we've continued to evolve the product, but basically we were testing to see if users wanted to watch together with their friends and watch games, watch sporting games and things like that. What we were able to do with that, though, is put a, let's call it a MVP or minimum viable product out into the market, and then continue to evolve it over time. So now, just recently, we launched, for example, Draft Together. So you can actually, come together on the Yahoo platform and during that critical day of drafting and start to do it with friends in a really great environment. So
yeah, that's
even
fantastic. Yeah.
in the same room. So that's fun.
Can't wait to try that out this August. And there's so much to get to that we didn't get to, but I want to ask just kind of lastly, for me and for us at Sportico, we are, sports is our days, our nights, everything. And so I'm curious, you can answer this kind of internally at Yahoo or just more broadly as you see it. Where does sports stack up on these issues? Where can other verticals and other categories learn from sports, and where can sports, maybe pick something up that someone else is doing?
Well, given I'm at a sports event, I'm going to have to only say that sports is our trailblazer at Yahoo. But actually, I will say that sports has been one of the areas where we've invested deeply over the last, several decades. As I think about Yahoo, in terms of both product fit as well as content, sports was one of the first to diversify and look at, alternative revenue, through daily fantasy. Through things like we've just recently launched our paid Yahoo Fantasy product, Yahoo Fantasy Plus. Mm-hmm. Sports, as we've talked about, is at the cutting edge of, at the opening up of the betting industry, obviously in partnership with MGM. So, sports is definitely has been a trailblazer at Yahoo, and I think continues to be, actually, as I look across the industry and look at what's happening, both from a, betting operators through to sports content players. You can see the industry moving super fast, and other industries are going to follow suit, because I think it's that unique combination of both content and the ability to be able to do fun things, transact, entertain, and ultimately potentially make money. That I think there's a lot more opportunity in other industries as well. So definitely at the cutting edge.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you there. Jo Lambert, thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob.